We are recording. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Shelley Halverson One Woman Show. For those of you that are new to Salt Lake City School District, I am your Director of Special Education, and I know I look super professional in my baseball cap, but it's time for a haircut, and I haven't done it, and so this is what you're getting. How is everybody feeling? I'm all over the place, so that's good. Up and down and all around. The purpose of this video today is to walk you through the guidance attached to the email that this has come in about determining in-person services for students with disabilities. As you know, the board has given the flexibility for us to bring students in person. And so that is something we are going to attempt to do. It does not mean that everybody comes in person. It does not mean that everybody comes every day, all day. It does not mean that every student gets every service in person. We're going to be really flexible, and we're going to prioritize certain groups, but we can't do all things for all people. So there's also going to be some flexibility in how we staff it. So if you're kind of panicking right now, I want you to just take a deep cleansing breath and listen to the whole kit and caboodle before you get too nervous, because we're going to just work through the issues as they come, and we'll do the best we can. So I don't want anybody to be worried about those things just yet. I want you to kind of let me walk you through how we're going to approach it, and then we can go from there if there's an issue. Okay, does that sound good? So I'm going to share my screen quite a bit, which I'm not very good at, but I'm going to do the best I can. So I'm going to start with this little gem right here. So this is a document that has been sent to your administrators already, and I've given them very abbreviated sort of training on this document, and they're getting this video as well that they can watch. So it will walk you through. I'm not going to read you the whole thing because you guys are smart people. So I just want to highlight certain things. This is, you know, an option for us right now while everyone else is online. All of us know that online is a difficult environment for a lot of our kids with disabilities, and so we are trying to respond to that as we should and see if there's something else we can provide to them. We did do summer services this summer in certain locations, and it went very well. We didn't have to shut anything down because of a COVID issue. So I just want to put that out there. And we just did very small groups with lots of protocols in place. So let's talk about all of it. So when you're thinking about your caseload, you want to make this decision one student at a time, as always, and it needs to be based on their IEP. So we, of course, are going to consider situations that kids are in, but that is not the driving force behind this. The driving force has to be, can we meet the students' needs, and what is the best way to do that to give them benefit from their FAPE? So a couple of non-negotiables I want to point out: you do not need to hold a full IEP team meeting to make this decision. This is something that you can get on the phone with a parent and kind of get their feedback on and find some things out, and then we can let them know what we can offer to them right now. So you do not have to do that. We have lots of health and safety protocols, which I'm going to show you. We do need to look at all students, so we're not going to say only this group can come or only this group can come. Obviously, the severity of disability kind of raises the priority level for providing some in-person services, but it doesn't mean that we can't hold a small, really small reading group for kids that only have language arts or reading skills on their IEP. So no one is excluded from this option. We are not sending people into homes. So if parents say, well, I don't want to come in person, but I want, my child has a one-on-one assistant and I want that person to come to my home, we are not doing that. So what we can do for people is try to find a system where we could maybe have a room that is just the one-on-one assistant and that student working on things and a path into that room where that child may not have to cross paths with other students. So we can offer to parents that we can provide a one-on-one situation for those students in a school that is highly sanitary and isolated from other kids, but we are not sending employees into people's homes. So just so I want to make sure that that's really clear. All right, but we can do contactless delivery of materials if we need to do that. So that is an option. Taking things to kids' homes is still a choice. So here's the steps. We want you to gather data about the student. And some of this data you already know because you had them last year, but it's a new year and a lot of you have some new kids. And so if you need help, because we have some of the data here, because I had you send me your documentation for the spring, then we can dig into that and find some stuff out for you. But we kind of want you to look at, you know, how did the spring go? We want you to look at, you know, in these first couple of weeks when we bring kids in for assessments, how do they do on those assessments? And, you know, where are they at right now in relation to where their goals kind of say they should be? So those are all things you want to take into consideration. We want you to look at the current IEP and look at the goals. Are these goals that can be addressed remotely? Does the severity of the student's disability impact their ability to access, you know, FAPE or their education at all? Some of our students, that's just not really an option. Does this student require really like high rates of praise, high rates of prompting, do they really need a consistent environment to be able to learn? Like those are really some high priority options to say, yeah, this is a kid who probably needs to come in. And then your next step is going to be to contact the families. And I'm going to show you, Jessica Lamb helped me create a little script for you to use when you talk to families on the phone. So you're going to talk to them. Let me show that to you. Let's see, can I just do this? I can. So fancy. Okay, so this is what Jessica has put together to help you make sure you get the right information from families when you have this conversation. We kind of want you to be, you know, let them know nothing's guaranteed that you talk about on the phone. Like they may suggest that they want, you know, 4 days a week for 6 hours. And your answer is going to be, well, we'll consider that as a possibility, but please do not promise anything. Do not tell them wholesale, no, we won't consider that. I want you to say, you know, we'll think about it, but we have to also look at, you know, can we do that safely and those kinds of things. So don't promise them anything, but don't just use that magical word, consider. It's our favorite word. The other thing I want you to think about is some of our parents are super stressed. So some of them may decide to vent to you. And they may decide, you know, just listen. Some people may need a little mini therapy session. I don't know. I just want you to be prepared that right now when you call families, you may get a little bit of an earful about different things, and you can just, you know, say, you know, that was a school board decision, or refer them to the website, and can we talk about your individual student? Those kinds of things, but you might have some people that need to talk to you. So I just want you to be ready for that, because it's happened to me several times this summer. So I want you to be prepared. So these are the questions we need you to ask. Has your student been registered? Because registration is happening differently and late this year. And so there's a whole bunch of kids that we don't even know where they are. So what is your current address? Are you interested in in-person? And if they're like, absolutely not, I will not do that, then you can just stop right there and maybe talk to them about what kind of supports do they need for the remote learning environment. And if they say yes, then let's ask them, what are your highest priorities? What are your biggest concerns after the dismissal and over the summer? What do you feel like we kind of need to focus on? And then kind of find out if there are any barriers to in-person services for them. And what would those issues be? It could be needing a specific schedule. It could be transportation. It could be, and once again, we can't promise transportation for every student, so please don't do that. But listen and and make sure you're writing all of this down, like taking some notes so that we kind of know who has said yes or no to in-person. And then the big one is number 2. If they give you a current address that is like not in your bounds anymore, it's a different address, it's kind of a wonky address, and they're in a self-contained special class, please make sure that your consultant for your special class knows about that so that we can help parents get registered in the right places. So resource kids, that kind of comes out in the wash with gen ed and registration and things like that. But our special class kids, if they give you a different address than they had in the spring, make sure your consultant is aware. And then these are some questions that you're probably going to get about, does my student have to wear a mask? What will the schedule be like? Will you be my child's teacher? Because we're going to talk about this in a minute. We may end up having to do some swapping of kids around to some different people. And so the answer is we don't know yet. It's going to depend on how the planning pans out, but we can't necessarily guarantee that the teacher that they had is going to be the teacher they have now. And then there's some stuff about changing their minds and those kinds of things. I want to bring up with the masks. We do have 2 options for a mask exemption. One is a medical exemption. So this could happen for any student, right? If there's some sort of asthma issue or something that precludes them from wearing a mask, then there is an exemption form they can get and their doctor has to sign it. And that's one option. The other option is an IEP 504 exemption. So that would be like you and the parent would sit together and be like, you know what, you are right. This child's sensory issues or whatever are going to make it difficult for them to wear a mask. One thing I do want to ask is that if you do go that route and we get the exemption, we would like parents to give us the opportunity to try to teach kids to wear the mask. In our current situation, it's a great life skill. So we could weave that into their in-person services, whether it be in an essential elements class or some other place, teaching them to be able to handle wearing the mask. I don't think we should, Jessica Lamb actually reminded me we should not assume that a student can't wear a mask based on their disability, and that we could likely teach a lot of them to do it. The other thing about wearing masks is we need to be careful how we talk about that, because we don't, if you take a kid who's super task avoidant about academics and you tell them, well, you can't come unless you wear a mask, then that kid's going to be like, I have an idea. I'm not going to wear a mask, and then I don't have to come to my work. So make sure we don't give the mask as an escape option for a behavior. And I will also send you guys a document that Weber and Canyons District are kind of using about some suggestions for PBIS options to help reinforce the wearing of masks. But I think we need to paint that in a very positive way and not, if we draw too hard of a line with some kids, then it's going to become a non-compliance issue. So anyway, something to think about, and we'll have to delve into that more as situations arise, but we can take that on a case-by-case, student-by-student basis. If parents tell you that they just, for whatever, ideations or whatever, they do not agree with mask wearing, it is the district's policy. So if you know it's a parent saying my kid will not wear a mask, then that kid needs to opt for online. So there's a difference though, right, between a kid's disability and a parent's, ideation about COVID and political beliefs or what have you about the masking. The other thing you need to know is that originally they defined a mask as a cloth face covering or a disposable face covering. They have now added the shields as a face covering. So that is a legitimate option. If a kid will wear that but not a mask, then that's completely okay. All right, so let's go back to this. If kids have transportation on their IEP as a related service, we can guarantee that transportation for them. I've had a meeting with transportation and I'm going to show you what we talked about. There are some options for providing transportation for other students, but there's just some things I'm going to need you to keep in mind. So we'll talk about that in a second. Okay, this is a really big one. This next one is you've talked to all your parents, you've looked at your IEPs, and you guys have made some plans. And then what I need you to do, and I'm going to talk to you lone resource teachers in a second, so hold that thought, is you're going to want to get together as a special ed team in your building with your administrator and make some decisions, because what I want to avoid is you having to do two jobs. So I don't want people teaching in person and then having to do it all again in the online environment. So we have some ideas about that we've been working on up here that we can help you with. And then the other thing would be, like, let's pretend that I am an Essential Elements teacher at Highland Park with Lisa Gifford and Valerie Blamiris. Let's pretend I'm part of that team. And we do all of this and we look at all of our students, and we have 8 students between the 3 of us or 10 students between the 3 of us that want to come in person, and the rest of the parents have told us no. So we might decide that I am going to do the in-person for all 10 of those students, even the ones who are not typically mine. And I might, in an Essential Elements situation, we might decide to break that into 3 groups a day, so we only have 3 kids at a time. We might decide to break it into 2, and we have them coming on alternate days. Like, we have that much flexibility that we could figure out how to serve those students however we need to. You could also break it up into smaller groups using paras. But then we decide, let's say there's 30 kids total at Highland Park, so I'm going to take the 10 in-person kids or the 8 in-person kids, and then Valerie and Lisa Gifford are going to divide the other 22 to do the online. So that otherwise, if there's like 1 kid in each class or a couple of kids in each class that want to come in person, I don't want you guys trying to figure out how I'm going to do this in person while these kids are waiting for me online. So that gives you some flexibility. If I'm on the same team at Highland Park and we go through all of that and there are only 2 kids that want to come in person, we might decide to have paras run those groups in person and the rest of us do the online. Now remember that paras have to have supervision in the building while they're there, and they shouldn't be planning all of the activities. So, they would need some direction from you about what you want them to do when those kids are in there in person. But then you could be running the online. So this is kind of a cool opportunity for us in a really uncool situation to be really creative with our resources. So you have that flexibility to move kids into different case management situations. And I've talked with HR, and we have the opportunity to make those decisions on a building level. So, those of you that are in a hub school like Backman, Franklin, and Emerson, or at a high school that has all of the programs in it, you guys can look at your entire special ed caseload as a school and decide what makes the most sense, and then go from there. So I want you to really think collaboratively that way, and I want you to be really flexible that way so that we can give the best option to everyone in the most efficient manner, if that makes any sense. So if we run into glitches with that, we will solve that on a case-by-case basis as well. So you guys can reach out to me and we will figure that out. Those of you that are the only special education provider in your building, we also have the latitude to pair people up and share people across buildings if that's what we need to do. We did that this summer, so that is something we can do again. You also can use your para. Like, if you have a caseload of 25 and only 3 want to come in person, maybe that's what you have the para do. If you have a caseload of 25 and 18 of them want to come at one time or another in person, maybe you have the para running the online groups for you. So just think really fluid think really fluid, and remember that right now there's no one answer. So we're just gonna have to solve it as it comes. So anyway, so that's that. And then you're going to go back and communicate with parents. This is what the plan is going to be for your student. And your administrators, you guys, the principals already know this, but they need to be involved in all of this. They need to know what you are doing, right? And what we are offering to parents. Once we're done, we're going to have parents sign this, right? So we will have it translated, but it kind of outlines the health department requirements that we are following. And so it walks them through what they can expect. So we're taking temperatures before they either get on the bus or before they enter the building. And we're asking parents who are maybe accompanying their children to the building that they wait with their child outside until they are admitted. And then we talk about coming to pick your child up if they exhibit symptoms. We talk about that if somebody tests positive and their child's been exposed, there's a plan for that and how that will be communicated to them. That if for some reason they shut the state down, the whole thing shuts down. So if we go back into red, then this is over and we all go to remote learning. And then there's some stuff about the procedures we're going to follow. I mean, we're really just making them acknowledge that they know this is our expectation. It's not like a promise. It's not some sort of super binding legal document. For our students that can and are older, we're going to have students sign that they understand that these are the expectations, because then we have some sort of documentation of that. And then it will be a chance for you to write, these are the days your child is coming, this is the times they need to be there, this is where it will be, and this is who's providing the service, and this is what we're going to work on. So those are kind of the things that we want you to share with them in writing. So let me talk to you a little bit about the transportation stuff before I show you the health and safety protocols. So I met with transportation, and these are some things that I just need you to have in mind, okay? Special education buses. So there have to be so many kids on the bus for the transportation department to receive funding from the state for those routes. Otherwise, we are paying through the freaking nose for those routes. And this summer we ran unfunded routes, but in the fall they just can't do it. So here it is. A special ed bus has to have 5 students on it for it to be funded. A wheelchair counts as 4 people. So if we have 1 wheelchair on a bus, then we only need 1 other student on the bus. And I'm telling you this because we're going to have to be strategic as we plan our groups about transportation and who's coming and going so that we can make sure our routes are funded. And Cynthia has been amazing. Jordan Peace, who is the router for Gen Ed, so our resource kids often ride those buses. He has been amazing, and they are willing to be super flexible. So, you know, if something pops up, just let me know right away and we will work it out. A Gen Ed bus has to have a minimum of 10 kids on it. So this is more for our secondary folks, where you have resource kids that ride the buses all the time, and you have kids that live far enough away that if they didn't have a bus, it wouldn't be an option. So we have to have 10 kids on those buses. We cannot have any more than 26 kids on a bus because they have to sit every other seat. So that is the max that we can have. But we can run those general education buses to bring resource kids into buildings if that is what we want to do. So, and then the way scheduling works is right now we have like early schools, we have middle of the road schools, and we have later tiered schools on a tiered schedule. We can't have 41 buildings running buses at different times because that's just, we won't be able to get everybody everywhere they need to be. So, and the other thing is when we're thinking about transportation, we need to think about if we get to the point where we can move into hybrid with all students, if you have some super wonky schedule for the bus, that when we move to hybrid, that's going to upend. So if we can stay aligned with these tiers as much as possible for start times, we will be able to continue, more likely to be able to continue that even if we go into hybrid. Does that make sense? So we just need to work with everybody here. So this is how it looks like. High school is a 7:30 time. And the 7:30 early tier impacts the following elementary schools that have special programs in them. Backman, Franklin, Emerson, Meadowlark, and Parkview are all on that early tier. Then we have an 8:30 tier that our middle schools are on, all 5 of them. And that includes the Highland Park, Dilworth, CBTU at Beacon, and Nibley Park. So whatever we schedule, if we can keep things in either the early tier or the later tier, and high schools get their own deal, then that will help us to be able to maintain that consistency if we go into hybrid. The Gen Ed high school buses, you guys, that can run their after school routes, and it's almost like a shuttle. And Jordan was talking about how we could just set times where they go to the stop and the kids get on, and then they bring them up to school, and then they take them back and they get the next group of kids. They have to sanitize the bus in between, but they can do that. They can also have 2 buses running, and they can leapfrog it. So they can have one bus bring kids for first period, wait. When first period is over, they take them home. Meanwhile, the second bus is picking up for second period, brings them to school, waits, takes them home. You kind of catch my drift. They can be, this is number 5, which I kind of already talked about, but we have the flexibility to be super accommodating with transportation right now. So even you special class teachers, if you decide, you know, let's say you're an EE teacher and you have 5 kids and you decide instead of having them come, you're going to have come in groups, you're going to have them come for one-on-one appointments with you. You know, we could run, you know, 3 appointments one day, 2 appointments the next, with space in between for cleaning, and we could just have buses running that schedule. Or if you're going to bring kids in for 2-hour groups and then a break and then another 2-hour group, we could do that. So the middle of the day we have flexibility, and right now we have lots of bus drivers they want to keep employed. Just be aware that then if we move into hybrid, some of that flexibility is going to disappear because they will have to do more busing for Gen Ed. Usually the middle of the day, even when we're in school, is pretty good because no one will be going on field trips. So as long as we keep our start times on the tiers, and we can we can be mindful about how we plan the middle of the day stuff, we should be able to keep doing it even in hybrid. We didn't talk about end times. So Cynthia and Jordan, because we don't know what you guys are going to plan, so we're just going to problem solve that part as we go. That's what we decided would be the best thing. So that's transportation. And then the last thing I want to show you, I know I'm doing this fast, but you can also do go back and read all of this at your leisure, and you have copies of it now in your email. So these are the health and safety protocols that we're doing in person. And of course, you know, anyone who is symptomatic needs to stay home. And families are going to know that if your teacher is sick, then those services don't happen that day, probably, because we're not going to have, I don't know what's happening with substitutes, so I can't answer that question. I wish I could, but I can't. So it might mean that we have to cancel groups that day, and that just might mean what it means. So we'll figure it out. But anyway, you know, face coverings, it talks about that. It talks about temperature checks. The magic number is 100.4. So if it's higher than 100.4, that person should not be in the building. So kids that ride the bus will have their temperature taken as they get on the bus. The kids that are being driven to school, their parents should wait while we take their temperature. And we're going to need to figure out how we can use paras to do that. But we learned during summer services that you kind of need someone manning the door, right? Because kids come late or whatever, and you don't want to be waiting there for one kid to take their temperature while you've got your little group with you or whatever it is. So you will want to use some of our paras to kind of man that whole coming into the building piece. And then group size. So as you're planning your groups, I want you to think about the following. The superintendent has told me he's comfortable with 5 students per one adult, but no bigger at any one time. So if I have a class of 10 and I want to bring them all at the same time, but I have a para in another room, I can have my para with the other 5. But in one room, 5 kids to 1 adult. When you are deciding what your group size is going to be, I want you to consider some of the following things, like younger students or students with a disability that limits their ability to social distance should probably be in even smaller groups, 2 to 3 students. Some students may only be able to come if they can do it one-on-one. And you may even have a student that could come, but you need you and a para with that student, and that's okay. That's okay. And then students should remain in the same student group as much as possible. So let's say I have that group of 10 and my para has these guys in this room and I'm in this room, and I'm doing math and she's doing reading. Instead of having the kids switch, if we can, we should have the adults switch. I realize that's not going to be perfect all the time, but that's what we should attempt to do. Oh, I need to do this. Sorry. I will accept that format change. We cannot have that showing. Students cannot share materials or supplies. So we have a bazillion Ziploc bags. If you want to make each student that's coming in Ziploc bags with their stuff inside it, then when they come, they have their bag. They're the only one that uses those things. When they're done, they go back in the bag, and that's it. So pencils, what have you, each kid gets their own materials. So, so that's that. And we should clean them in between. So you can have kids clean their own things before they leave and put them back in the bag if you want to do that. What we did in the summer as far as hand washing is we took their temperature, they went straight to the bathroom, they washed their hands, then they went to group. These groups were only an hour long, so then we had them leave. If they're going to be there for longer than an hour, we're supposed to sanitize our hands once an hour. And the district has started, let me show you, handing out, sorry, I'm slow. The district has started handing out like spray hand sanitizer. It can also be sprayed on your keyboard, is my understanding. And I don't have this one going yet, but which it lasts a whole lot longer than the goopy stuff because people don't have to use as much. So that's an option. But anyway, so we want that done once an hour. We also need to have, like, you can work with your principals on this, but a traffic pattern, right? One entry point, one exit point that hopefully is not the same place, so that we're minimizing the travel of students. Now, we're not going to be the only people in buildings. Like assessment is going to be bringing kids in for individual appointments. So we just need to make sure that when we're making these plans, we're making them for everybody. So be cognizant of that. I mean, we'll be in the buildings probably more than anyone else, but that's just something to think about. And then kids need to be taught all of these protocols explicitly, practice, maybe we make a game out of it, try to make it fun, and try to make it feel normal for them. That will help them a lot as they do those things. So those are the protocols we're going to follow. We also have this. Now this is my chance to model for you. For those of you that have students who have hearing impairments, hold on. We have these, or younger children, that you can wear, oops, sorry, and kids can see your mouth and your face and your facial expressions. And I don't know what magic this is, but they are anti-fog. It says it on the box, and it really doesn't fog up. Kind of amazing. So we have that, and we also have a ton of face shields and a ton of disposable masks. So we have all of those kinds of things. Okay, so that's a lot of information that hopefully this isn't taking too long so that you'll actually watch it. Oh, look at that hair. Anyway, so it's a lot, and I know that it is probably kind of overwhelming. I am grateful that we have the flexibility to bring kids in person because I just know personally how I've talked to a lot of parents and a lot of families, and I know what the impact has been like for them, and it's been really hard. And so I'm grateful that we have the opportunity. Part of the beauty of the district starting remote for Gen Ed especially is that that's why we have this opportunity. And so I'm just super grateful that I work in a district that prioritizes our students. And I know quite often it probably doesn't feel that way to you guys, but I want you to know that I have sat in hours and hours and hours of meetings this summer about restart, whether it's in hybrid, whether it's remote, whether it is, and I have seen way more collaboration amongst those of us that work up here than I've really ever seen before. We, you know, teaching and learning has given us an educational technology specialist. So Gloria Shirley, who is my good dear friend, is going to be part of our department now. And she is working with some of your colleagues to plan some training about how to use Canvas specifically with SPED. And she's going to be available to us to help us with those things. We've been given licenses to things that we didn't have to pay for. We've done, like, and then every meeting I sit in, I'm sitting in the meeting and I haven't said a word. And one of your principals speaks up and says, well, how is this going to impact our SPED kids? What about my self-contained program? And they're very worried and very concerned. And I'm just so appreciative that one of the talking points for starting remote is that then we can bring our more vulnerable students in the building, because it's much safer that way if there aren't other kids in the building. I just feel very lucky and fortunate that that is the tone in our district, and that it's not just me who is prioritizing them. So it just makes me grateful, because that is not the experience that my colleagues are having in other districts. So we have not been an afterthought, you guys, not at all. And I'm super grateful for that. I just want to end with something. And you're going to hear me share this quote from the rooftops 900 times. Oh, what did I do? I forgot to share my screen. Sorry. 900 times, and you'll hear it again in PD next week, and you're just gonna have to get over it, because I simply do not care. But my friends at Totem put together a COVID compendium, and I'm gonna get you all a copy because it talks about social emotional activities you can do with your kids because of the impact of COVID on their mental health. And it talks about how to handle classroom management during this time. And it also talks about us and how to do some self-care at this time. But I've read the whole thing, and there's lots of good exercises in there that you can do for yourself. But this is probably my favorite part, is Christian Savy, who used to work for our district, put this part about teacher self-care together. And he talks about psychological flexibility. And he uses this quote from Bruce Lee, right? So we can all be amazing ninja people now. But he said this: we're going to focus on developing psychological flexibility, which is simply the ability to experience life as it is. Martial arts legend Bruce Lee seemed to understand the power of psychological flexibility when he said, we must be shapeless like water, formless like water. When we pour water in a cup, it becomes the cup. When we pour water in a bottle, it becomes the bottle. When we pour water in a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Water can drip and it can crash. Become like water, my friend. We will be metaphorically poured into a number of uncomfortable situations this year, and if we resist them, we will spend a lot of energy with little result. If we accept the situation and flow with it, we will find new and useful ways to respond to the experience. And then he gives some activities that you can do to help yourself with psychological flexibility. But this is like my new mantra right now. When I'm in a hard situation, or when something else comes up or changes, because holy Hannah, things are changing so fast. I just say to myself, be water, my friend, that this is just it. And so I'm going to flow with it. And it has greatly reduced my stress. So I want you to think about that as you're thinking about this whole thing with bringing kids into buildings. Think about being water, and let's just flow with it and find out what we can do to maximize our kids' benefit from their FAPE and their special education services. And I hope what I said made sense. I've attached all the documents to this email so that you can read through them and start using them with your teams. And I encourage you to reach out. The consultants have all of those documents, and I've walked through this with them. So if you need help, just let us know, and we will try to help you solve whatever problem you want to solve. And I'm just really grateful for all of you, and I'm grateful for the job that we do and what it means. And have a great day. Thanks for coming to my one woman show.